evening, you're with ET Now. This is the India Development Debate. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthi joining you live from our news center in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague Supriya Shrinate. Let's head straight to the big debate tonight. Then we will do everything to ensure that Indian elections are safe. That's the word coming from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. Deposing before US lawmakers on the massive data breach, Zuckerberg took responsibility for FB's failure to protect personal information of tens of millions of its users as he tried to quell the storm over misuse of personal data, in fact, for political gains. Facing a volley of questions over FB's data mining techniques, Zuckerberg admitted that the social giant failed in its duties to safeguard data from being misused to create social imbalance.
Indeed, and the reverberations are already being felt back home here in India. The BJP lost no time to hit out at the Congress for its alleged links with Cambridge Analytica, the data analytics firm accused of misusing Facebook data to influence poll outcomes. Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, also in his capacity as IT Minister, has now sought an apology from Congress President Rahul Gandhi for hiring Cambridge Analytica. The Congress has denied all charges and retorted by saying it has nothing but a diversionary tactic by the Modi government, which is now facing the flak for non-performance on all fronts. The all-out war over Zuckerberg's deposition and its impact on the upcoming elections is a big topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate tonight. We'll begin with a stellar panel right here. We've got Sanjay Jain, former Chief Product Manager, UIDAI, volunteer at Supriya. We've got Saket Modi. We've got Nikhil Pahwa, founder, editor and publisher, Media Nama. Krishna Sagar Rao, spokesperson of the BJP, and Adil Singh Boparai, spokesperson of the Congress. If Saket Modi is with us, I'd like to go across to him. If he's not ready, let's begin with Nikhil Pahwa. And Nikhil, is an apology enough for what is arguably the biggest data breach, the biggest privacy scandal in recent times? Zuckerberg goes before US lawmakers and says he's sorry and he would like to own it up. He will do things better. Is an apology just better? Because at stake are also free, fair, democratically contested elections.
Well, Supriya, I was just watching the particular testimony that's going on right now, and one of the senators actually asked about or pointed out the list of apologies that Facebook has made over a very long period of time. Since 2010, in fact, they keep messing up and they keep apologizing. So, they were making the case for the fact that self-regulation does not work anymore, and that large platforms which collect large amounts of data need specific laws governing their actions and the uses of their data. Because what's also important is that Facebook is required to submit audits of applications and the uses of data to the FTC on a regular basis, and those audits did not find anything wrong. So there's clearly a case of these processes failing for Facebook, and therefore you need more stringent guidelines. Self-regulation doesn't work anymore.
Self-regulation doesn't work anymore. Sanjay Jain, is that the clear conclusion now? The fact that the era of self-regulation is over, and it's time that big social media giants realize that as well.
Yes, certainly. I mean, the time for self-regulation is all past. But one of the things I want to remind all our listeners here is that India is much ahead of the US and the Europe on data protection and privacy. We have a fundamental right that has been found by the Supreme Court. We have the IT Act and the Aadhaar Act to protect some of the data that we have. If you notice, this Facebook scandal actually broke middle of last year, and then we had the Equifax breach, and none of these have led to any kind of criminal action. Compare that with what we have seen in India. Wherever we have had stories of data breaches, we have actually seen the government file cases. While some of us may or may not agree with the cases being filed, the fact is we do have a law that protects us. And then coming up with the new Data Protection Act that's expected to come soon, we're going to get even more stringent laws and even more of regulation of all kinds of data. So I think we have actually come up into this space where we are far ahead of the rest of the world, and that's something which we really need to recognize. And we also, on the technology side, there's a data protection architecture that's being developed, will come to life very soon, that will actually start to show how people can use their data to empower themselves. So all in all, I think self-regulation is moving away, and we are moving into this new world of having laws that govern and help us help our privacy, and India is actually ahead in that matter.
Okay, let me take it across to Saket Modi. And Saket, I've clearly got two very divergent views on the panel to begin with. Sanjay on one hand and Nikhil on the other. And while Sanjay believes we can lead the world with these laws, Nikhil obviously disagrees with that. But I'm going to ask you the other question. I mean, we're talking about self-regulation. Zuckerberg himself said that he's open to right regulation, but he hasn't committed to anything specific. I'm curious to understand, what is right regulation in today's day and age?
So to my limited understanding, I believe right regulation simply means regulation that is reasonable for starters. Now, I did not expect Mark Zuckerberg to say what kind of regulation, because remember, regulation always works in the maker-checker concept, because somebody who's being regulated cannot be the ones who creates a regulation. So what I saw the thing, and I don't think there was anything more as a CEO of Facebook that Mark could have really done, because he said that he's absolutely ready for the same. Now it's really on the US Congress, the Senate, to go ahead and come together and put in tech experts along with policy decision makers to come up with a regulation which will basically circumvent anything to do with social media, and not just in the US. I hope this happens on a global scale, because internet is that one place without any boundaries. So yeah.
Fair enough. Before I take it to the politicians on the panel, I want to get one quick question from Nikhil, because as we talk of regulation, it has its sort of flip side, upside, downside. Nikhil, how does one sort of find this fine balance between regulating social media and sort of policing free speech, weeding out propaganda and fake news, which is obviously the intent of any sort of regulation, and sort of clamping down on free speech? It's a very tricky balance. How does one find it? Have we found it in India, you think?
No, I don't think we found it in India, and I don't think this is an answer that we'll find anytime soon. It's going to be a bit of a struggle for us, and just as the battle between privacy and allowing sharing of data to provide better services, but at least from a privacy perspective, we know that there are specific laws, especially the EU GDPR, which have stringent limitations on data collection, purpose limitation. Most importantly, they allow for transparency, so you know what data has been collected about you, and they give you the option of having your data deleted. So these are strong powers that are given to users. But one of the things that actually Mark Zuckerberg kept talking about in his in both yesterday and today was about the fact that users have control over their data, and what they post and what they allow for collection. Unfortunately, what happens with this kind of data collection is that there are issues of bounded rationality. We do not know what our data can be used for, and it's impossible for us to understand that this can be weaponized and used against us and our country. So I think beyond self-regulation, beyond just giving users control, we also need to regulate for harms to ensure that misuse doesn't happen, which then in turn forces platforms to ensure that misuse doesn't happen, because Facebook has clearly failed to do that.
Facebook has failed to do that, but let's get to the politicians on this show, because this is a huge political hot potato with both sides of the political spectrum taking barbs at each other. And Adar Singh Bopra, it's only fair that I start the political discussion with you, because the Congress party has been under a lot of fire on this one. And I'm going to quote India's Law and IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad, who earlier today tweeted, and I quote him now, that Cambridge Analytica's role in manipulating elections is clear, and Facebook has assured to stop it and maintain integrity of India's elections probity, demands that Rahul Gandhi should apologize and promise not to manipulate voters and divide the society in the future. A very simple question there. Will Rahul Gandhi apologize, Adar Singh Bopra? Because if you actually look at what whistleblower Christopher Wiley in his testimony said, he said he believes that the Congress was a client of Cambridge Analytica, and added that the company has offices and employees in India. Can the Congress deny its links with the data firm that it used big data to influence voters?
Well, Supriya ji, first and foremost, the law minister of this country is a habitual liar. And the reason why I say this is he's been caught lying on the SC/ST issue, where he said that the government of India was not a party. We showed the order of the Supreme Court where notice was issued to the Attorney General of India. That's point number one. Point number two, it's become the modus operandi of the BJP that whenever they're facing flack, whether it's for maladministration, whether it's for corruption, and now the latest instance where the BJP as an organization is shielding criminals and rapists, they try to divert attention. Now coming to the issue at hand, there were two individuals who testified before the Digitals Committee of the House of Commons. One was Christopher Wiley and the other gentleman was this person called Paul Oliver. Paul Oliver has categorically said that we worked for the BJP in 2012. We had handed over data to an RSS leader called Suresh Joshi. As far as Christopher Wiley is concerned, in response to a question, he was making a speculation. On the following day, he posted a tweet and said that yes, we worked for a national political party in the 2012 assembly elections in Uttar Pradesh. If you join the dots and read the statement of Paul Oliver and Christopher Wiley conjointly, it's quite clear that Cambridge Analytica was actually working for the BJP. This is point number 3. Point number 4, we all know about the Indian arm of Cambridge Analytica, a company called SCL, which is Strategic Communication Consultancy, which was headed by an ally of the BJP. It was headed by Amrish Tyagi, who is the son of KC Tyagi, a senior JDU leader. So there is clearly a BJP, Cambridge Analytica, SCL and Amrish Tyagi nexus which the BJP hasn't been able to respond to. Now coming to the larger issue at hand, let's not forget that the BJP government had actually argued against the right to privacy. It was the Honorable Supreme Court which unanimously came to a conclusion that this is a fundamental right. We've seen instances where members of your fraternity have pointed out the loopholes in the Aadhaar system and how the BJP has actually lodged FIRs against your journalistic fraternity, members of your fraternity. So it is actually the BJP which is using this information for political purposes.
Okay,
and let me make one final point. Let's also talk about the Namo app. Namo app is a situation where NCC cadets are being forced to download an app where information, their personal information is sent to servers in America, where their personal information, their contact list, their GPRS, their phone book, all is being downloaded for political
I take that point.
purposes.
I take that point.
BJP
You know, I don't
this?
want this. I take that point, and I keep saying this on this debate every often. We usually don't want to reduce this to a political blame game, but since you've made some charges, it's only fair that I allow Krishna Sagar Rao, the BJP. I take that point. I take that point, but I want Krishna Sagar Rao to respond to some of the specific points you made, and adding a question there. One, he's saying that what about, you're talking about data privacy, what about what you've done with the Namo app? He's saying, I mean, today the Congress party is saying, forget about our links, we have no links with Cambridge Analytica. It is the BJP that has a nexus with Cambridge Analytica. I don't know which political party in this country has a nexus going with Cambridge Analytica. Surely all political parties are answerable for, if at all they've had any ties. They're all in denial right now. So Krishna Sagar Rao, your chance to retort to the points made there by Adil Singh Bopara of the Congress.
Sandeep, the defense has to be from Congress because they're trying to defend the indefensible. That is why I see the spokesperson in bundles. He goes from, the UP issues to Madhya Pradesh issues to the issues currently which are being asked. So we can understand Congress is in a piquant situation and they're in bundles. But now what Bharatiya Janata Party has alleged now has been vindicated. The vindication came not from just Wiley, who is the whistleblower, but it came from Mark Zuckerberg, who is the CEO of Facebook. He openly said that Cambridge Analytica has done a breach, and that breach costed them a boot. They were kicked out, and now they are under investigation. And Facebook is actually now trying to shut down a lot of consulting firms which are doing the data mining, data brokerage, the way Cambridge Analytica did. And who's the client of Cambridge Analytica? We don't need to really dig deeper. The logo of Congress party was right behind the CEO, and the entire media and the world has seen it. Now, I don't need to defend in too many terms as to whether it's BJP or the Congress which was the client for Cambridge Analytica. If you add up the dots, you understand. Now, the question is, there is nothing wrong in doing data mining or data analytics or big data analytics. The issue here is the misappropriation, manipulation and usage of data without seeking the permission of the individuals, 87 million to be precise, from India. Now, Zuckerberg also mentioned that 2018 or 2019 elections, because he might not be really clearly understanding when the elections are coming. But he said that we will ensure that the elections are going to be fair. I think that he is stretching too much. He is no one to ensure that the elections will go which way. But Congress will ensure that it will have these kind of pitiful companies trying to win them, and from 44 to maybe single digit next time, because that is the desperation which we see. Rahul Gandhi from 1 million to 6.5 million, Sandeep, it rose in 6 months, and then the next could be Twitter. So I think Rahul Gandhi should apologize and apologize without any condition, and it is required that he apologize to the entire country.
Mr. Rao, you've said a lot in this debate, but I think what you've missed out is the fact that a director of OBI, which is Cambridge Analytica's India arm, Himanshu Sharma, on his LinkedIn profile had very categorically mentioned that he managed campaigns for the ruling party BJP, and the profile also managed the database to be provided constituency-wise to BJP candidates. I'll come to that in just a bit. But the Congress party has some tough questions to answer, and Adil Singh Boparai, just to come to you. You said, you know, the Namo app and all of that, and I will ask a question subsequently. But the Congress, is it going to deny that data in its with INC, the with Inc. app was stored in Singapore-based server in contravention to security? And if there was no breach, why was that app deleted? This was a subject of much debate, but now that we're discussing data security, it's only fair that we ask you this very important question.
Well, Supriya, I just have a preliminary point to make. The gentleman from the BJP spoke about the Congress logo at Cambridge Analytica's office. Let me just tell him, if tomorrow I have Donald Trump's picture right behind me, that doesn't mean I worked for Donald Trump. We all know how organizations, international organizations, make exaggerations. It is a normal business tactic for them. So therefore, to read anything beyond that, I would say is completely wrong. Point number one. Now, responding to your question, the Congress party had that app. We discontinued that app, because we realized that our volunteers and our supporters wanted to have a direct feedback from us. They wanted face-to-face contact. They wanted to come to our offices and our headquarters and directly interact with us. We discontinued that app. But the fact of the matter is, the BJP is overlooking. The Congress party joined the social media arena much later than the BJP. It was actually Mr. Modi who had the first mover advantage when it came to social media. We all know this. Mr. Modi capitalized on social media post 2010. The Congress party came much later. Therefore, if you conjointly read the entire narration, it is quite clear that all these data analytics firms, whether it was SCL, which is connected with Amrish Tyagi and KC Tyagi, or whether it's Cambridge Analytica, they had actually worked for the BJP, and there is a categorical statement by Paul Oliver. I find this very strange that the BJP goes to town talking about Christopher Wiley's statement, but how can they overlook Paul Oliver? Paul Oliver was also working at Cambridge Analytica. He was the same gentleman who testified before the House of Commons. He said that we worked for the BJP and handed over data to Suresh Joshi.
Okay, Adil, I take that point. Adil, I take the point. Here's the thing. I don't think any political party can claim the high moral ground on data privacy, as this very question is proved. You know, my panelists, my experts are waiting patiently. I'm going to go to them in a minute. I have one follow-up question to ask Krishna, and then Mr. Krishna Sagar Rao, and then I'm coming to you. What about the vulnerabilities of the Namo app and the kind of invasive data it had mined? Since you spoke about data mining, will the BJP deny that personal data, device information was not shared with a phishing site called in.wzrkt.com through the Namo app, which belongs to a US-based app engagement platform called CleverTap, as brought out by a French security whistleblower, so, and then change its privacy policy? I mean, can the BJP or any political party really claim this high moral ground on data privacy and data security?
See, Sandeep, you know the environment and the ecosystem of the social media platforms are fast changing, and it's a dynamic environment. Certainly the privacy situation of all the apps, inclusive of the Namo app, is being upgraded on a daily basis. So if at all we were manipulating or indulging in a proactive breach like Congress was doing, we would have dumped the app too. Because the Congress was doing it proactively, that is why they had to dump their app. That establishes that they were doing the malpractice, and Namo app is not. Because if at all we were doing anything wrong, you can map it, right? You are mentioning the 3 points right now. Now, if you go back to those genome mapping or backward mapping of the data, we are insisting that the data should be stored in India today. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also has mentioned that the Indian data has to be stored in the Indian servers today. And you know, we were talking about implementation of regulation. What regulation are we talking about in the kind of world we are living in today? The servers can be somewhere else. Even if you have a regulation, it will not be able to, you will not be able to enforce any regulation as long as the data is not on your shores. So that is the reason why India need to still regulate, and we will certainly do that. But now what is exposed clearly is the double speak of the congressman there, because he says that his app is down because they realize that it is already passing the privacy information elsewhere. So he has admitted in the national media that the Congress app was stealing data from the Indian voters.
No, 1 second. Mr. Rao, you send your data to the US, the Congress sends its data to Singapore. You know, it's data privacy back here, and I want to bring the debate exactly where it belongs. Facebook is under fire, the ramifications for India, and I want to take it back to the experts because I don't want mudslinging and political pot shots at each other. So let's take this back to the whole Facebook argument and the testimony and the issues that are rising out of there. And Saket Modi, let me come to you, and then I'll go to Nikhil Pava. Advertising and data collection models are incompatible with what we perhaps would call a trustworthy social media network. How does one reconcile these two seeming oxymorons? You know, a trustworthy social media network and still advertising and data collection that is very much the heart and soul of some of these companies.
Supriya, if you really think of it, I'm personally very, very surprised by both what the BJP and Congress is trying to put forward as a point. They're both running away from Cambridge Analytica as if they are trying to say that they will not be going ahead and using a data analysis firm, a social media marketing firm, or a branding firm for that matter from now on. I mean, for everything, even if any of them were using Cambridge Analytica, it is not their fault because the source of the data is where the problem was. It is not what they were doing that problem was there. On the other side, I was very happy to see Mr. Krishna mentioning that, look, big data analysis is nothing wrong, but a small correction to what he said, 87 million people and their data, that he said it were Indians. No, most of them were actually Americans. So we still do not have any actual instance where you have information being shared about the Facebook profiles of Indians through any applications or through any quiz application or any other firm misusing or getting an access to some data which is not being authorized by the user. So that's number one. Number two, again, I'm personally very surprised because the whole objective of running an election campaign is to go ahead and talk to your voters or the target audience and tell them and try to understand first what is their problem, and then trying to bring in your manifest what should be the development agenda. If you use data to do that, you can actually do that in a much better way than anything else, and I think that should be the key reason why you should drive the votes, because your manifest should be as close as possible to the on ground people and understand what they really require, and that's what data
Saket,
can do.
You're not answering my question.
I don't see manipulation is a problem here, because okay, the question which you're asking, can advertisement and privacy regulation coexist together? My answer is there is a very thin line to do that, and I personally believe that it's going to be a very, very difficult thing because it's uncharted territories that governments, industries and consumers have gone into. So I don't think it's going to be easy, and I don't see that coming anytime soon.
That's an important part. Sanjay Jain, let's get to the sort of bottom of this, and again, keeping politics aside, in light of the Facebook, of Mark Zuckerberg's testimony, the one question that I've been sort of grappling with is, how does one better align the incentives of a social media platform vis-a-vis its users? There is an asymmetry in this which is fundamental to the existence of these companies, fundamental to the business model of these companies. How does one better align the the incentive structure for the platform vis-a-vis its users? Is paying the only option?
Actually, paying is not the only option, but clearly the fact is that these companies have moved well beyond the size where they should have been regulated. It's actually been very late, and now anything that you do in terms of regulation is going to require that the companies go back to the drawing board and figure out what works, what doesn't work. In a typical startup works exactly like this. You have an idea, you build something, you see what works, and then you grow it from there. Changing something as fundamental as technologies around privacy or the legal structure is going to have to require them to go to the drawing board. And while payment may be one of the options that is considered, there may be others as well. Now, the key problem I see in this entire Facebook debate is really twofold. One was that users had their data taken in ways that they didn't expect. And that was one aspect of it, which is where we believe there's a breach of privacy. The second aspect was that the data was used in a way to manipulate elections, which was the second aspect of it. And I think these are two distinct aspects, and we must separate the two when we are having this debate, because really data privacy is about the first one. It's about what is the expectation that I as a user have when I use a social networking site, or maybe not even a social networking site, maybe a search engine, maybe a shopping site, and how they will take that data and make it so that my experience with the product is great, yet without doing something that surprises me, without doing something that takes my data and puts me to harm. And so I think Nikhil referred to this earlier, is that really this is, beyond the consent piece, there's a question of how users are coming to harm and how regulation and laws must be built to protect people from harm, because you clearly don't know how the data is going to be used. And I think, again, my view is that while the GDPR goes some way, I think the US is far behind, and India will hopefully be able to lead the way again on that.
Okay, the US may be far behind and India may show the world its way. But Nikhil, I'm going to come to you and on one of the points that Sanjay made early on, which is these companies perhaps are way too big now to be regulated, or to the kind of regulation that we have seen. Both Facebook and Google are set to attract nearly 84% of the global spending on digital advertising. And that is a virtual monopoly. Facebook's biggest competitor is Instagram, owned again by Facebook. Is there merit in the argument that perhaps these companies are too big, and the whole debate about how they need to be broken up into smaller entities, because this monopoly is dangerous for the world at large?
So I think Google already sees this coming, which is why it became Alphabet, and each of those entities is a separate company. And it looks like they're preparing for being split up into separate companies in the future anyway. But I wanted to address one point which I think I disagree with Saket on, was about advertising. Let's go back 10 years ago, we still had advertising and it worked, and it wasn't as violative of privacy as it is today. The problem that we're facing is that there is psychographic targeting based on your and my behavioral patterns. Advertising is being targeted to us, and that's based on all the data that's being collected and the analysis that the algorithms are doing on our behavior. So, I think that's what we need to clamp down on in terms of behavioral targeting. That's what happened in case of the elections as well, that, if you were neurotic or if you were likely to be afraid about issues like national security, you were shown false information to change the way you think about someone, or hate them even more or dislike them even more. Right. The other point I wanted to address was about servers in India. I think it's a misnomer that just because you have the data in India, it's not going to be misused. The problem is we don't have a proper data protection law. I would rather that my data be stored in the EU, which has a very strong data protection law, because the misuse there would largely be prevented because of that strong law. So bringing data into India doesn't really change anything. Having a strong data protection law does. In the EU, even if the data of EU citizens is held outside the EU, they still have jurisdiction over it, and their law still can apply to that data. So we need to allow storage of data anywhere in the world, but have our laws apply to it. That's a better way of doing it, instead of just trying to bring all the hosting into India because that really doesn't serve any purpose if your laws aren't strong enough.
That's an important point you're making on a day when the government has indicated that the Prime Minister wants all servers to be located in India. That's Nikhil Pava saying why it may not necessarily be a good idea. But Saket Modi, I want you to respond to the point made there by Nikhil Pava on the fact that these ads are sort of this sort of profiling and targeting that happens. And, I think a very specific question was asked to Mark Zuckerberg as well on whether or not, Facebook sort of tracks the browsing patterns of its users even after they've logged out of the site, and he did not have an answer to that question. And obviously it's a known fact that they do. So, how does one work in this new normal that we are living in today?
Sandeep, I personally believe that we've forgotten all the advantage, all the cutting edge technology that we've been getting an access to thanks to Facebook, Google, Instagram, Twitter over the last decade, absolutely almost at free of cost or at a very, very low cost. Now, we all know there's no free lunch, and when it's said that if you're getting a product free of cost, you're the product being sold. So my take on that is just this, that today, thanks to technology, the targeting doesn't necessarily need to happen only for wrong reasons. I personally believe it's actually a better thing for me rather than looking at 5 different websites and trying to figure out what I want to buy. If I, using artificial intelligence and machine learning, a website can recommend something to me, because remember, the final decision maker is me, whether I have to buy something, whether I have to vote for something. If I am not intelligent enough, and if a machine can go ahead and read my patterns and predictively change the way I think, it simply means that I'm dealing with something more intelligent, and in the clash of 2 people who are more intelligent, obviously the more intelligent one survives, and I personally don't see that as a challenge at all, and I would say that is the advantage of technology, and that's the reason why technology can be a great equalizer for people under the poverty line, people who are not getting access to education, etc., because then you can now target people and give them stuff that they specifically require. So I think it has both pros and cons. It really depends on where do you see it from, but I'm a huge optimist from where technology can take us in the future.
Yeah, I think we need to fear technology as well a little, but I think I'll share that optimism as long as my data is not breached and people whose data is breached is not misused. But I'm going to take it back to politics once again, because that is where the story is really boiling as far as India is concerned. And Mr. Rao, our Indian politicians, and we've got both the Congress and the BJP, and there's an interesting point that was made on this panel, that suddenly politicians are shying away from big data. The reality is that both of you are going to use big data in elections in 2019, perhaps not misuse it, but you will definitely use it to your advantage. Now, are Indian politicians then prepared to set aside political differences, set aside petty politics, move beyond the blame game, and find solutions to ensure data safety, ensure data security? If data is going to be so big and if there is going to be so much data to mine, we might as well have data security, data safety. Are politicians willing to set aside those differences and work on that? Mr. Rao.
At least BJP is ready to do that, and that is what we are doing with the apps which are within our framework, and the government is ready to do that. That's why we have the regulations which are being implemented, and that is the reason why Prime Minister Modi has requested for the servers to be located here, and there is going to be some strengthening of data security and data privacy within the nation while we are while we are governing the country. But having said that, I wish to also take a leaf from what happened today. I was watching the testimony. I think it is still going on as we speak. One of the House Democrat asked Mark Zuckerberg, "What is your actual business?" And he was actually stunned to answer. He took a couple of seconds to answer, because whether it's the media or social media, he said it's a technology company. He couldn't say that it's a media company, because once it's a media company, the content which is there has to be responsibly handled. So I think Zuckerberg actually is spelling out what is happening with this company. That's exactly what's happening in India too, is we are still trying to grope with what is happening to the data, how it can be secure, and what is manipulation and misuse of the data which we post ourselves on the social media. So today I think we are evolving to understand how to protect the privacy of the voters of India, and just by depending on one app, I don't think it's going to be very relevant, because I think tomorrow the Twitter is also going to be questioned. as much as I see, because that's what's happening on Twitter too. We don't know what our data is being used for. We don't know who's handling our data. We don't know how we are being targeted. It's not just commodities, a commercial activity. It's also for elections. So while we are saying Rahul Gandhi should apologize, we are saying it because it's a political consulting company, the Cambridge Analytica. And then you have become a client there and you're misusing the data of the Indian voter to gain votes in elections. And they have clearly notified through their depositions, the guy who's the whistleblower, that the Indian National Congress has used the data to manipulate elections in 2014.
Okay,
Despite
I
that
get
they
that.
could make only 44 seats.
Okay.
But it is not about who came first or who came later.
Okay. Okay,
It's not about who
I
came
get
first
that
or who
point,
came
Mr.
later. as
Adil
my,
Singh Bopra, I have a quick
Congress,
question for you.
Can I come in?
spokesperson is
Yeah,
saying.
Adil, I'm coming
It's
to you.
about who's trying to manipulate and who's trying
Allow
to
me to
be straight.
interrupt you there, sir. I'm running out of time. Adil Singh Bopra, a quick counter from you, but one specific question. Mr. Rao here says that the government wants to, it was a news report which was slightly speculative in nature, but today he's saying that the government is actively considering moving all servers to India. Nikhil on the panel says it's not necessarily a good idea. What is the Congress party's view on it? Does the Congress party have a view on it? Would you want all servers to be located in India? And your counter to what Mr. Rao said very quickly.
Well, Sandeep, BJP has done a PhD in peddling lies, but be that as it may, let me respond to your question. The BJP government has been in power for the past 4 years. I repeat, they've been in power for the past 4 years, and still all what you hear from Mr. Modi and his band of spokespersons is, we will do this and we will do that, forgetting the fact that this is one more year and they're going to be out of power next year. Now, since your expert panelists were referring to advertisement, let me remind you that this is in pursuance of an RTI information that this government has spent more than 3,755 crore rupees on digital advertisements in the first 3.5 years of being in power. Point number one. Point number two, what goes to the core of this issue is that data is being misused, that data is being taken against your will and under coercion. And a classic example of this is the NCC cadets. What you see in Namo app is that an official order has been issued by the government where all NCC cadets have been asked to download the Namo app. So this is a prerequisite, it is part of their official duty. You're being forced to down the Namo app.
You made that point earlier on the show, Adil. I asked a specific question. Is the Congress party in support of moving servers to India?
Allow me to complete.
Specific question, please.
We want, let me respond to this. We need better data protection laws. This is a reality. Nobody is running away from this. But let me remind you, when a Tribune journalist pointed out flaws in the Aadhaar system, how did the BJP respond to this? The BJP lodged an FIR against the whistleblower. So this government is not really sincere about protecting data. This is a government which misuses data for electioneering purposes. It manipulates data, and this is a result of what you see today. Aadhaar data is not safe, your PAN card numbers are not safe, election dates are not safe. There is no information in this country which is safe.
Okay.
And despite that, we have BJP spokespersons coming and giving us lofty rhetoric. Please, you've been in power, you have reduced governance to an event management exercise, and that is the irony of India today.
All right. So we will not reduce this show to political mudslinging, but I think politicians on both sides of the political spectrum have questions to answer as far as use of big data is concerned. If the Congress was so adept, they should have got more seats perhaps and more influence. But on that note, we'll slip into a really quick breather. We come back and discuss precisely that. Elections, are we overestimating the importance of social media and all of that there, or are there real reasons to worry? Back in a moment, stay right here with us. All right, you're back with us right here on the India Development Debate. We're discussing the Facebook testimony and its impact right here in India, which is being felt in the political space. Sanjay Jain, let me begin this round of discussions with you. Mark Zuckerberg in his testimony very categorically said that Indian elections are crucial and he will verify every advertiser doing political ads, will deploy AI tools to take down fake news, grow security team to over 20,000 people. My question is, in the world's largest democracy, will all of this be really enough?
So, I'm actually not convinced that Facebook has all the answers to how our elections could be manipulated. So, from that perspective, I really don't know if what he will do will actually have the right result or not. But of course, he should make sure that his platform is not weaponized, that fake news is not passed through the platform the way it was done earlier. And he needs to do all of that anyway for doing what they're doing. But clearly, I just don't know if they understand India and the Indian context enough to do what is right and what's wrong.
Saket, is this fear of election manipulation real? I mean, is that something that you would lose sleep over in a country like India? Or do you think it's sort of exaggerated, the impact that big data could potentially have on elections, or the ability of political players to actually use social media to impact election outcomes in a country like India?
I personally believe that there's a very, very high chance, in fact not just chance, I know that social media will play a very, very important role in the 2019 election for a simple reason, Sandeep. If you see the sheer number of smartphones in India, which has jumped from 15 million to 400 million in the last three years. Now, when 400 million smartphones are there in India, you're talking about 1 out of every 3 Indian today carries a smartphone which is connected to the internet and has processing power more than the first Apollo mission that went to the moon, which has a gyroscope, which has a proximity sensor, which has an accelerometer, which has a microphone and a camera and a GPS. These are all sensors through which applications collect the data and basically use it for whatever purposes they think is legitimate. So considering India is this huge bed of smartphones, and more importantly first time smartphone users, because unfortunately these 400 million people who are today carrying smartphones, I personally feel are not smart enough to understand how smart their smartphones are. The result, it's easy to get them duped into downloading applications, getting their data, and then of course processing the data and going in whichever direction or manipulating that in whatever way is possible. So I think it's going to be a very important, it will play a very important role.
Right. While Zuckerberg said very categorically that he will ensure the integrity of elections is maintained in places like India, Nikhil, while he said that, he also in the same breath also admitted that security, including around elections, and quote to quote him, isn't a problem that can be fully solved. Is he here admitting that there will always be a risk of breach and interference with free and fair elections?
Yeah, in fact, today, like about 45 minutes to an hour ago, he said that this is an arms race, and therefore it's going to be very difficult for him to counter any propaganda or anything from the Russians, because they will keep adapting as Facebook starts adapting. As long as there's all this data out there, even if they have that data and they're able to target people using platforms other than Facebook or even on Facebook, it's impossible for them to check. It's also impossible for them to check the source of funding for the advertising campaigns. So look, what Facebook can do is they can do the best they can, but most importantly, they need to be genuine. They need to be transparent with about how things are going. They need a better auditing mechanism for all the apps that collect data. They need to limit the amount of data they collect and the amount of data that others collect, because even from an Indian perspective, can we really depend on the benevolence and the efficiency of Facebook to protect our elections? I don't necessarily think so. So we have to have stringent norms in our country around this kind of behavior as well. I don't think we do right now.
Mm-hmm. Will the government bring in those stringent norms? Is there some sort of intervention required, Krishna Sagar Rao? Is there some regulation required by the Election Commission to safeguard integrity of the entire electoral process? And to some extent, doesn't the onus also lie on political parties to ensure that people don't manipulate these social media networks to influence voters?
No, there is a necessity for the government to also get in and ensure that there is a regulation which has stringent outcomes if at all there is a violation in terms of the privacy of data of the Indian voters. And the interference in the Indian elections cannot be tolerated. I don't think the NDA government will be a viewer or be in the gallery. We will ensure that this doesn't happen. What happened in USA, for that matter, Zuckerberg has also mentioned the invasion or weaponization by Russia in interfering with the elections in US. That's now, I think it's a open secret for everybody as to what has happened there. We should ensure that it doesn't happen in India. And it is a threat to democracy, and the massiveness of this platform, as one of the panelists has rightly mentioned, that the monopoly of this platform or similar platforms like this and Twitter is a huge threat to democratic values of not just India but across the world. Indian government should certainly sit up and take notice of what these apps and multiple apps and platforms are capable of. In terms of, while India is more heterogeneous than a homogeneous United States or any other country, it can be manipulated and misused for electoral purposes in certain ways than just few.
Indeed. But you know, while Mr. Rao makes this clarion call that the government will not be a mute spectator and perhaps yeah, just 1 second, and you know, there's some kind of data security that will be required, and there will be intervention that's required on the legislative front. Let me ask politicians, and you know, Adil Singh Boparai, will you agree that the onus for free, fair elections, keeping up the integrity of elections also lies on political parties? And can political parties ensure that this will happen, or is, you know, is winning so important that everything will be thrown out of the window, all rule books?
Well, Supriya ji, the Congress party has always stood for transparency and fairness in the election process. But the problem today is every institution in this country is being systematically subverted. Whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the way the parliament has been functioning on account of the BJP's policies, or whether it's a section of the media. But what I find is a bigger cause of concern is that some social media entities today are being deliberately used to provoke violence. They're spewing hatred and bigotry at an unprecedented level. That is what really worries me, and these are organizations and entities which are directly linked with the BJP. I'll give you a specific instance and point. The postcard issue in Karnataka. When we took action against the postcard owner, Mr. Hegde, the entire BJP rank and file, their leaders and MPs came to his defense, defending somebody who's been spewing hatred and dividing India. So see the hypocrisy of the BJP. Now you have the BJP spokesperson saying that what these organizations have done is wrong, which amounts to a threat to democracy. I asked the BJP spokesperson, you're in government, what is stopping you from initiating criminal prosecution? If you have evidence that Facebook and other entities are misusing data, there are legal provisions under the IT Act. Book them, initiate legal process against them.
Okay.
It is one thing to come on national television and mouth homilies, but it's quite another thing to actually take action.
Okay,
if you're serious and sincere about it, take action.
Okay,
they will never take action because they are beneficiaries of this.
Okay,
They've
fair
been
enough.
misusing this data for political purposes.
Fair enough, fair enough. Oh, I have to take it. I just got 2 minutes left on the show. I need to get closing comments from the experts on the panel. I'm coming to you. I'll come to Krishna Sagar if I have time, but I need to go to Sanjay Jain first. Very important question that needs to be discussed. You spoke earlier about GDPR. Is India ready to transition to a tough data privacy framework like GDPR? I mean, do you expect the Justice Sri Krishna Committee to suggest a framework that will entail fines of up to 20 million euros or 4% of a firm's total global revenue, as is the case with GDPR? Can India have such a strong privacy framework, Sanjay Jain?
I actually think India will need a privacy framework that's appropriate for India, and while we may or may not have such strong financial fines, I certainly think there will be criminal aspects that will be proposed in the bill which will promise jail terms, not just financial fines. And hence I do think that we will see a very different kind of regime out in India which will probably be right for us.
Okay, Nikhil Pahwa, before we end this show, my question really is on an issue that's very close to your heart. Can it realistically ensure that consumers own their own data, and how does this fit in with the Aadhaar framework?
Well, in terms of the Aadhaar framework, no one knows who owns the Aadhaar data. I don't think we've gotten any clarity on that from the government. But as much as owning our data is important, I think we also need transparency. We need to really know what kind of data is being collected by Facebook, because recently there was one disclosure that came out where phone calls were being tracked by the Facebook app and documented even, and just because Facebook had taken the permissions to access those, right? So we do also need transparency, because that then forces or allows users and regulators to hold these companies accountable. And we also need the ability to delete our data, because then we can start afresh. Then that personalization, that behavioral and psychographic targeting can't happen. For data that's already out there, for the data that's leaked, especially in case of Aadhaar, with those 216 websites putting Aadhaar data out there, we don't know what to do about it. Those people are already compromised for the rest of their lives, over 135 million of them.
Okay, we need more transparency. We need a strong data privacy framework. I don't think anyone on the panel is going to dispute that, and I'm sure everyone on the panel will also agree that we've made a big move with the landmark judgment of the Supreme Court on the right to privacy, that in some sense lays down the broad contours of what should be the privacy framework for citizens of this country. Hopefully, we will see that come through with the Justice Sri Krishna Committee. Hopefully, there will be enough checks and balance to ensure that you own your data and that there is no trading of that data that happens without your knowledge.
And of course, we also need to ensure that India continues to have free and fair elections. We are the world's largest democracy, and we must ensure that the integrity of our elections doesn't get diluted with any amount of data mining that anybody should be allowed to do. On that note, thank you very much for being with us on the India Development Debate. Can't thank this wonderful panel enough for being with us tonight. We take a quick breather, but back up next is Top 10 at 10 with Tanya Bharadwaj.
Good night.